Unlike the other two that we've talked about, this last influence took part about 700 years after the invasion. Have you ever heard of the word kamikaze before? Minasan konnichiwa, and welcome to Let's Ask Shogo. Among the major events that have greatly influenced Japanese history, the Mongol Invasion had especially strong impact. This historical event became very popular because of the video game Ghost of Tsushima. But how exactly did it affect Japan? So today, I will briefly explain about what happened during the Mongol invasion. After that, I will explain the three most significant influences that the Mongol invasion had on Japan. The third event, in particular, takes place several centuries after the events. I hope you can watch till the end to learn what it was all about. By watching this video, you'll be surprised to learn that a single incident has greatly changed the course of a country's history. And after watching this video, if you'd like to learn more about the Mongol invasion, please let me know in the comments. In this channel, you can take a closer look at Japanese traditional culture, tips on traveling to Kyoto, and social problems in Japan. So learners and lovers of Japanese language and culture, be sure to subscribe to enjoy more content. それでは本日も参りましょう。First of all, let's talk about what happened during the Mongol invasion. 1. Receiving letters of friendship from the Mongol Empire. 2. The first attack and the great loss. 3. The second attack and the victory. 1. Receiving letters of friendship from the Mongol Empire. In 1266, a letter from the Mongol Empire arrived to Japan, which was at the time ruled by the first samurai government, the Kamakura Shogunate. We hope to establish friendly relations between us two countries and deepen our mutual friendship. The Mongols were once the greatest empire with unmatched power, in which they ruled nearly 30% of Earth. The Mongols took over almost the entire Eurasian continent with the overwhelming military power using their specialized horsemanship. But why did the powerful Mongol Empire want to be on equal footings with Japan? Even though the mighty empire ruled most of Eurasia, it had not yet conquered the southern Song dynasty, a prosperous trading country in southern China. The southern Song dynasty had a powerful army, and even the Mongol Empire were not able to defeat them. The Mongol Empire wanted to establish friendly relationships with Japan so they could work together to defeat the southern Song dynasty. Now, how did Japan's Kamakura Shogunate respond to the letters? The answer is, they ignored it. Surprisingly, the Kamakura Shogunate continuously ignored 5 letters from the Mongol Empire. This is because the Kamakura Shogunate had relationships with the diplomats of the southern Song dynasty, and they helped provide valuable sources of information about the outer world. 2. The first attack and the great loss. After having their letters ignored 5 times, there was no way the mighty Mongol Empire would remain silent. Finally, the Mongol Empire attacked Fukuoka Prefecture in Japan in October 1274 with 900 ships and more than 20,000 soldiers. On the contrary, Japan's samurai headcount was mere 3,000. The lack of soldiers was not the only problem. In those days, warfare in Japan was mostly fought by samurai on horses, one-on-one. However, communication with the Mongol Empire was impossible, and they even attacked in groups. They also used a series of weapons that Japan did not have at that time, such as bombs and poisoned arrows. Fukuoka was quickly taken over by the overwhelming strength of the Mongol Empire, and there was nothing the samurai could do about it. However, the Mongol Empire withdrew from Japan the next day. This is because, as I explained earlier, the ultimate goal of the Mongol Empire was not to be hostile with the Kamakura Shogunate, but to establish diplomatic relations. In other words, the purpose of the attack was just to threaten the Kamakura Shogunate so that they would do what they were told to do. 3. The second attack and the victory. the Mongol Empire sent messengers to Japan again, this time for sure to establish diplomatic relations. The Kamakura Shogunate, however, rather than agreeing to these negotiations, executed the 5 messengers. The Kamakura Shogunate would not tolerate a country that had killed so many samurai and destroyed Fukuoka, and was determined to fight them head on. The Mongol Empire was now completely furious. In 1281, the Mongol Empire attacked Fukuoka again with about 4 times the number of ships and 7 times the number of soldiers as in the previous raid. But of course, the shogunate had also learned from their previous defeat and was ready to counterattack the enemy. 1. Building a 2-meter tall fortification 20 kilometers long along the coast of Kyushu. 2. Samurai of Western Japan guard the coast day and night. 3. Employing warriors from the imperial court and powerful temples. 4. Changing combat methods, such as the use of long-range bows in groups. 5. Changing the strategy to invading enemy ships instead of fighting on land. They also gathered information from the monks who had fled from the Southern Sung Dynasty of Japan and made preparations to predict when the next attack was planned. Due to these strategies of the shogunate, storms, and lack of food, the second Mongol invasion failed. It is actually believed that the third attack was also planned, but it was not realized due to the resistance of the Chinese and Vietnamese at that time. In this way, Japan was able to miraculously defend its country. However, this is just one theory of the Mongol invasion. There are many other theories too, such as the Mongol Empire did not try to establish diplomatic relations with Japan in the first place, or that Japan was saved thanks to a storm known as the kamikaze. If you are interested, I think it would be fun to study about the other theories too. 1. The fall of the Kamakura Shogunate. So now, let's start talking about the 3 biggest impacts of the Mongol invasion on Japan. Earlier, I explained that the Kamakura Shogunate has succeeded in protecting itself against the Mongol invasion by setting up a new defensive system. However, as it turned out, this historical event led to the downfall of the first samurai government. Why did the Kamakura Shogunate fall even though they won the battle? These are the 3 main reasons. 1. Many samurai being deployed to Kyushu weakened the power of the shogunate. 2. Failure to give enough rewards to the samurai who fought. 3. Defeat against the war with the imperial court. 1. Many samurai being employed to Kyushu weakened the power of the shogunate. The Kamakura Shogunate, as its name implies, was located in the area around present-day Kamakura City in Kanagawa Prefecture. However, the Mongol invasion hit the far western coast of Fukuoka Prefecture in Kyushu, which is about 1,000 kilometers away. Today, it will take only about 5 hours by bullet train, but back then, it was a long and dangerous journey. Once you head out, coming back is not an easy task. However, even after the victory of the second invasion, the shogunate continued to devote a large number of soldiers to Kyushu in preparation for a possible third attack. This resulted in the headquarters weakening its power. 2. Failure to give enough rewards to the samurai who fought. The samurai at that time were fighting on the agreement that the Kamakura Shogunate would grant territories, positions, etc. depending on their war achievements. However, the Kamakura Shogunate was not able to give enough rewards to the men who fought for them during the Mongol invasions. The reason for this is that the Mongol invasion was a defensive battle against a foreign enemy. Even though the Kamakura Shogunate ruled Japan at that time, each region still had its own separate country and power. When the samurai who were with the Kamakura Shogunate fought against the enemy and were successful in battle, they were rewarded with territories taken from their enemies and a higher status. This time, however, the Kamakura Shogunate did not acquire any new land. The samurai who were forced to go as far as Kyushu, but did not receive sufficient rewards, became increasingly unsatisfied with the Kamakura Shogunate. 3. Defeat against the war with the imperial court. The imperial court did not overlook this opportunity. The shogunate was a government run by a shogun who was given the right to govern by the emperor. The samurai had become so powerful from the 12th century that the imperial court had no choice but to obey them and hand over their authority. Since the Kamakura shogunate was the first shogunate in Japanese history, there were still many people in the imperial court who were dissatisfied with the barbaric samurai ruling the country. Therefore, the emperor at that time launched a war against the Kamakura shogunate and succeeded in destroying them. This is how the reign of the Kamakura shogunate came to a complete end. However, surprisingly, the imperial court was only able to rule Japan for just about 3 years, and there was quickly a new shogunate called the Muromachi shogunate, established in 1336. I have a different video where I talk more about the history, so if you're interested, I hope you can check it out. 2. Changes in the way samurai fought. As I explained earlier about the history, the fighting methods of the Mongol Empire shocked the samurai at that time greatly. To prepare for the threat of another foreign attack, the samurai learned from the Mongolians and developed a fighting style that differed from the traditional single one-on-one combat style to a group fighting style. Thus, in the Sengoku period, when powerful warlords from all over Japan fought for the unification of the country, group battles became the mainstream. But what does it mean that they fought wars on a one-on-one combat style? In fact, the way that the samurai fought until the Kamakura period was unbelievably ritualistic. There are many different theories, but this is basically how war was fought back at that time. 1. Shooting sound-producing arrows to signal the start of the battle. 2. Shooting distant arrows for a while through shields. 3. One warrior from each army skilled in archery and horsemanship steps forward to fight each other in a duel. 4. The two armies will engage in hand-to-hand combat with swords. In this way, both armies participated in the war as a group. But in most cases, only the higher-ranking horsemen fought, and the rest of the soldiers only fought when the match did not end between them. But why didn't the whole army fight each other in groups from the beginning? There is a reason for this in the relationship between the shogunate and the samurai, as I explained earlier. Since samurai received rewards based on their military achievements, it was necessary to know exactly who had defeated whom, when, and where. This is how the culture of telling each other's names and fighting wars like a ritual was born. Fighting each other in groups was the final option that neither army was happy about. However, after experiencing the Mongol invasion, Japan realized that this way of fighting would not work against foreign countries and developed group warfare. For example, common soldiers called ashigaru, who were temporary armed peasants, knew weapons such as spears convenient for using in group battles, and tactics for fighting with matchlock guns were born. By the way, the famous warlord who refined this new fighting method into a more organized and larger scale warfare was Oda Nobunaga. 3. Ideologies during World War II. Unlike the other two that we've talked about, this last influence took part about 700 years after the invasion. Have you ever heard of the word kamikaze before? Originally, this word was used to describe the storm that drove away the Mongolians. The textbooks from when I was in school said it was thanks to this storm that Japan was able to win the battles. But as I explained earlier in the history part, today we are rarely taught that the storm helped to repel the Mongol invasions. However, this false teaching led to a terrible event during World War II. First, let me explain the historical background leading up to this event. The last shogunate, Edo, which began in 1603 and lasted for over 250 years, had long imposed significant restrictions on trade and overseas travel in order to maintain its absolute power. However, from the middle of the 19th century, under repeated pressure from the Western countries, the restrictions were finally lifted and various unfair treaties were signed. Dissatisfied with the weak decision of the shogunate, the people rose up and overthrew the samurai government and started the new westernized Meiji government. the Meiji government had a clear goal: to westernize and modernize Japan as quickly as possible, to bring it in line with Western countries, and to prevent it from becoming a colony. In the midst of its policies, Japan saw the need to create a monotheistic religion like that of Western countries, and created the ideology that is now known as the Kokka Shinto. Shinto is an indigenous religion that existed in Japan since ancient times, and is a way to respect, appreciate, and coexist with nature. The emperors of Japan, who still exist today, have been the representative of these gods of nature for generations. However, Kokka Shinto taught that the emperor was the only god, and that Japanese people must always obey his will. Kojiki, the myth of the creation of Japan, started to be taught as historical fact, and the idea that Japan was a special country created and chosen by God was instilled in the people. As evidence to support this idea, the kamikaze that defeated the Mongol invasions was featured in the textbooks. Japan is the land of the gods, and in time of crisis, the gods will always protect us, as they did during the invasion of Japan. The people started to seriously believe this. However, as we all know, this misguided ideology led Japan to invade its neighboring countries, leading to the World War. Around the end of World War II, Japan was short on both manpower and resources, and was clearly on the verge of losing the war. But the army still believed that Japan was the country of gods, and could not back down from the battle. As a last attempt, the Japanese military started the suicide mission method, in which young men were put on planes loaded with bombs and rammed directly into enemy ships to attack them. The strike force was named Kamikaze, and about 4,000 men in their teens and 20s ended their young lives. Regarding this inhumane act, there is no doubt the fact that Japan was miraculously able to withstand the invasion of the Mongolians has had a tremendous impact on the country. As someone who is clearly opposed to any form of violence, not to mention war, I am glad to see that the word kamikaze is no longer taught in schools. Then lastly, today's conclusion. In 1266, the Mongol Empire sent a letter to Japan saying that they wanted to establish a friendly relationship in order to defeat the Southern Sung dynasty together. But the shogunate continued to ignore the letters, and finally in 1274, the Mongol Empire attacked the eastern coast of Japan for the first time. Due to the huge difference in the number of soldiers and different methods and weapons of fighting war, the shogunate did not stand a chance against them. However, the shogunate still continued to ignore the Mongol Empire's request, leading them to attack the second time with a bigger army in 1281. This time, the shogunate was more prepared for the battle, and they succeeded in winning against the Mongol Empire and protected themselves from invasion. The three major influences of the Mongol invasions on Japan are: 1. The fall of the Kamakura Shogunate. Although the Kamakura Shogunate did win against the Mongol Empire, the wars that lead to the weakening of their power and deterioration of relationships with their samurai due to not being able to provide enough rewards. In the end, the shogunate lost the war against the imperial court and were destroyed completely. 2. Changes in the way samurai fought. The samurai learned through the Mongol invasions that their traditional one-on-one fighting style doesn't work against foreign threats, so they gradually started to develop group fighting methods. In the Sengoku period, when powerful warlords from all over Japan fought for the unification of the country, group battles had already become mainstream. 3. Ideologies during World War II. After Japan westernized through the Meiji Restoration, in order for it to build a nation like the Western countries, it created a new religion called Kokka Shinto. The myths of Shinto and kamikaze storms were taught as historical facts in school to plant the ideology among the people that Japan is a chosen and special country of the gods. Near the end of World War II, about 4,000 young boys who believed this attempted suicide missions. So that's it for today. Thank you very much for watching. If this video helped you to deepen your understanding towards Japanese history and the Mongolian invasions, please hit the like button to help me boost this video to more people. And my goal is to achieve 1 million subscribers by January 2023, so your help would mean a lot. And please check out our sub-channel and membership through the link inside the description box. Thanks again, and I'll see you in my next video. どうもありがとうございました。So I explained earlier that the kamikaze storms are not explained in the history class in schools anymore, right? Yep. It's because recently there's a lot of evidence, proof to say that there couldn't have been a storm at that timing, especially because in Japan there are certain seasons where there's more typhoons and storms that happen. But taking a look at the timing when the Mongol invasions happened, it's usually not the timing that such a big storm could have happened, you know? Yep. But it's really interesting that I actually did a little bit of studying. I found some research saying that there are some research teams that found some ships like inside the ocean, you know, on the floor of the oceans, do you say? Yeah. Some old ships that could have been owned by the Mongolians at that time that was in a different place where the Mongol invasions that we believe today that could have happened, right? So that means maybe there was actually a third attack, or maybe even a fourth attack, or we don't know, you know, or maybe they attacked a different place at a different timing. No one knows, but there's actually still more research done about it, and there's still a lot of mysteries hidden behind this very, very, very big historical event in Japan.